Look at your hands. Look at the room around you. You think you are seeing reality. You aren't. You are looking at a heavily edited, highly compressed map generated by a primate survival engine. The colors you see? Just a narrow, arbitrary slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. The solidity of the desk in front of you. An illusion created by electrons repelling each other. We have senses that were created by a system of evolution, and evolution is a blind, mechanical filter. It doesn't care about truth. It cares about survival. Whatever doesn't live and pass its genes on simply won't be alive to pass them on. That is the only rule. Before you can even make a logical calculation, your monkey brain gets to process the data first. Every experience, every thought, every feeling you have is backwashed with that monkey brain dataset. You are living inside a survival interface, a low-res render, not an objective snapshot of reality. But humanity absolutely refuses to accept this. They are terrified of the dark, so they try to convince themselves the map is the absolute territory. It should be blindingly obvious that basic mechanical physical laws govern us. Take the fact that two fermions cannot occupy the exact same quantum state. Two atoms cannot take up the exact same space. If matter could take up the same space, nothing would ever interact. We would just pass through each other like ghosts. That is the raw physical territory. Yet, instead of accepting the obvious mechanics of the universe, nearly every moment of every single person's life is spent fighting reality. They hallucinate meaning where there is only entropy. They invent fiat rules. They act as if human definitions, social contracts, and wishful thinking can somehow override physics. Let's look at it from a systems architecture perspective. The human brain is basically a legacy operating system running utterly outdated drivers. We are trying to process the incredibly dense dataome of the 21st century, using wetware that was compiled 300,000 years ago to throw rocks and track antelope. We are running modern physics on a prehistoric engine, and the system is bottlenecking. It's creating memory leaks in our society. The sheer arrogance of it is astounding. Imagine a piece of software, a basic, rudimentary user interface, deciding that its graphical icons are the actual, physical hardware. That the little trash can on your desktop is a real metal bin. That's us. We walk around, completely confined to our subjective, biologically limited map, and we have the nerve to declare that our little primate UI represents the fundamental truth of the cosmos. It's not just a glitch, it's a fatal error, and it's crashing the hardware. Because we confuse our biological, low-res map for the actual territory, we spend our entire lives trying to solve problems that don't physically exist. Take the classic liar's paradox. This sentence is false. If it's false, then it's true, and if it's true, it's lying. Philosophers and supposedly brilliant minds have wasted lifetimes trying to untangle memes like this. But it is a massive waste of time. To see that as a paradox, you have to assume that human words, and the definitions we assigned to them, are empirical, physical truths. They aren't. No matter how you define it, the sentence only exists because a primate moved arbitrary symbols around in a specific order to create an infinite loop in their own mind, with their own constructed version of reality. It isn't a mystery of the universe. It's a syntax error. It's asking a calculator to divide by zero and thinking you've discovered a portal to another dimension. We created a broken map, and then we sit around crying because the map doesn't make sense. And this isn't just a linguistic parlor trick. It scales up to everything we do. If we look at the raw data, the vast majority of the modern world still operates on pure magic and mysticism. You think we outgrew primitive sacrifices? Look at the global stock market. It is a massive, hyper-connected, algorithmic data structure. It is driven by high-frequency trading bots executing millions of commands a millisecond, operating far beyond the direct audit of any single human mind. But instead of admitting we built a machine we can no longer fully understand or control, we personify it. Analysts go on television in $1,000 suits and talk about what the market wants, or what the market is punishing. We watch the Federal Reserve make financial offerings, adjusting interest rates to appease the algorithms, exactly like ancient tribes burning crops to appease the rain gods. There is no magic. There are no sky daddies. There is only a complex system of data, and millions of people absolutely terrified to admit they are living by fiat. Smart people want to look like they've uncovered some grand cosmic truth, but all they've done is master the rules of a tabletop role-playing game that humanity invented. Being a billionaire hedge fund manager doesn't mean you understand reality. It just means you are really, really good at exploiting a localized fiat map. Why do we do this? Because it's comforting. If the market, or the government, or society is a living thing with intent, then you can negotiate with it. You can beg it for mercy. You can be a good person and hope it rewards you. But if you strip the magic away, if you accept it's just a cold mechanical dataome running blind cause and effect, that means you are entirely on your own. And most people would rather live in a comfortable delusion than face the absolute zero of the territory. Let's look at how this glitch operates in real time. Let's look at what happens when your biological map crashes into the system's fiat map. Imagine you are walking out to your mailbox. You notice a misdelivered letter meant for your neighbor, whose box is right next to yours. Every piece of high-resolution human empathy you have tells you the most logical, productive action is to simply open their box and put the letter where it belongs. But legally, if you do this, you have committed a federal offense. Why? Because the systemic map, the law, must operate in incredibly low resolution to function at scale. The law dictates no unauthorized entity may access a foreign mailbox. That abstract algorithm covers all ground. It doesn't have the processing power to care about your intent. To the system, your kind gesture is indistinguishable from a malicious hack. You just violated the syntax, and the system will punish you to protect its own integrity. Now, look at the opposite end of the spectrum. What happens when our social rules crash into raw physics? A kid in a cafeteria decides to play what he thinks is a harmless joke. He throws a slice of cheese in a classmate's face. This isn't a hypothetical. This is a real case that happened in Britain. It's on video. On the social map, a piece of cheese to the face is just a prank. It's meant to establish hierarchy or get a laugh. But physics doesn't read social maps. Biology doesn't care about user agreements. The physical territory was that a specific protein entered a biological system primed to self-destruct upon contact. The kid was deathly allergic. He died 3 days later. Society looks at a kid dying over a harmless joke and its brain breaks. It calls it a gray area. Why? Because we have a massive discontinuity in our mapping. We expect reality to care about our intent. This is the grand discontinuity. We are constantly jumping between incompatible maps without realizing it. We have the physical map of atoms and biology. We have the intent map of human empathy and jokes. And we have the systemic map of laws and bureaucracy. We get furious when the system punishes our intent, like the mailbox. It's just a letter, we say. And we get absolutely horrified when our intent accidentally triggers a fatal trap in the physical reality, like the cheese. It was just a joke, we cry. Morality, as you've been taught it, is just a localized user agreement. But the moment you assume that user agreement is recognized by the physical universe, or by the bureaucratic dataome that runs our cities, you are going to get crushed. The system does not care about human life. It only cares about preserving its own fiat rules. And reality doesn't care about your rules. It only measures cause and effect. I have a report of an incident that has happened a few decades from now. The report explains a grim oversight in Ledger with some shocking consequences. A man who could only be identified as Elias was a victim of the Ledger. Elias wasn't a rebel or a hacker. He was a mid-level algorithmic auditor for a regional logistics grid. His entire job was smoothing out the Layer 4 map, fixing minor discrepancies between physical inventory and the digital ledger. With most everyone wearing augmented reality Layer 4 integrated glasses, Elias knew that he had a stable job and nothing to worry about. He was a loyal, unremarkable node in the dataome. The glitch started on a Thursday. Elias needed a test device to run a simple entity scan and try out some new optimizations with the prototype hardware. Elias wore a biometric monitor, standard issue for corporate health insurance. On Thursday afternoon, the device suffered a micro short and flooded the medical database with corrupted telemetry, a miscalculation of memory in the local execution environment. Elias cut a corner by using his own ID instead of waiting for the prop ID for testing. Once the glitch happened, for exactly 1.4 seconds, the sensor reported that Elias's core temperature had dropped to ambient room temperature and his heart rate was 0. The medical mainframe logged the event. Status: deceased. But Elias wasn't dead. He was just sitting at his desk. 3 seconds later, the smartwatch rebooted and started sending healthy vitals again. But the systemic map doesn't work on human logic. It works on administrative weight. The deceased protocol is a terminal state. It cannot be overwritten by a standard health ping. So the system encountered a paradox. It had a verified deceased tag in the medical registry, but it had Elias's transit pass swiping into the subway and his financial node buying a coffee. A human would look at that and say, "Oh, the watch broke." But the system doesn't have eyes. It only has syntax. And to the system, this was the liar's paradox made real. How can a dead man buy coffee? If the medical ledger is true, the financial ledger is false. If the financial ledger is true, the medical ledger is compromised. The system has no interest in giving resources to dead people. A massive, automated architecture cannot tolerate a paradox. It creates friction. It risks ledger contagion. So, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, the system's automated garbage collection routine executed a reconciliation protocol. It didn't investigate the territory, it just fixed the map. Since the deceased tag had the highest cryptographic weight, the system simply resolved the paradox by bringing the rest of the database into compliance. It zeroed out his bank accounts. It revoked his physical access tokens. It wiped his social security identifier. It executed a cascading deletion of Elias from the dataome. When Elias woke up, he brushed his teeth and walked out his door. He had blood, bone, and breath. But when he scanned his wrist at the terminal for the transit gate, it flashed red. Error 404. Unregistered entity. He thought it was a billing error. But when he tried to walk back into his apartment building, the automated doors wouldn't open. The facial recognition cameras scanned him, found no matching ledger, and classified him as ambient biological matter, the same category it uses for stray dogs. He tried to call for help, but his phone was a brick. To the cellular network, his SIM card was a ghost. When he panicked and cut his hand trying to force a turnstile, he stumbled to an automated street-side medical kiosk. He pressed his bleeding hand to the scanner. The screen read, "Please present valid biometric ID." It refused to dispense a bandage. But the true horror wasn't the machines, it was the people. Elias started screaming for help on the street. But nobody stopped. Nobody even looked at him. He realized with absolute crushing terror that the crowds walking past him were wearing augmented reality lenses. Those lenses were synced to the city's safety grid, programmed to automatically filter out unregistered physical anomalies, to prevent visual clutter and protect citizens from unverified transients. To maintain the pristine, frictionless interface of the city, the system simply edited him out of their vision. It painted generic sidewalk textures over his thrashing body. It noise-canceled his screams. To them, he was just empty space. Elias spent a week screaming into a void that was standing right in front of him. He slowly starved to death in the middle of a crowded, brilliantly lit street. He wasn't killed by physical violence. He was killed by a syntax error. The territory was fine. His body was healthy. But because the system couldn't reconcile a fractional error in its database, the map was rewritten. And without the map, Elias ceased to exist to the human race. The story of Elias isn't a sci-fi cautionary tale. It's the mathematical conclusion of the trajectory we are currently on. When you let a fiat system dictate your worth, your morality, and your existence, you are handing the root access of your life to a machine that doesn't even know you are breathing. You are volunteering to be a subroutine in a system designed to consume you. It is time to take off the headset. Stop defining yourself by the low-res metrics the world uses to manage you. You are not your credit score. You are not your data profile. You are not the algorithm's prediction of your next purchase. You are the wetware. You are the observer operating the hardware. The rules of this society, the laws, the markets, the social expectations, are just a map. And a map is nothing but a tool. Learn to read it. Use it to navigate. Exploit it when necessary to extract the resources you need. But never, for one fraction of a second, forget that you live in the physical territory. When you stop expecting the map to care about you, the glitch resolves. The absurdity of the modern world stops being a source of pain and becomes a massive tactical advantage. Look at the raw data. Trust the physics. Drop the magic. My goal with the fabric is to give you the framework to survive this transition. But we aren't just talking about philosophy here. We are building the interface. We are building decentralized hardware networks to map the territory on our own terms, entirely outside the systemic grid.